Joining us this morning, Public Advocate Jumaane Williams, who co-sponsored both bills. Public Advocate, thank you for being here.
Always a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Let's talk first and foremost about the NYPD ending stop and frisk 10 years ago, right? But it has really been replaced, as you know, by a series of different types of stops and interrogations. So before we get into the bill, can you explain the different levels of police stops and the kind of transparency that you are looking for here?
Yeah, first, we want to dispel some of the myths I've heard journalists and even folks from law enforcement saying. This has nothing to do with asking directions, saying hello, asking how the neighborhood is, asking the neighborhood deli owner what's going on.
So where did that confusion come from, that people assumed it was that was part of the equation?
Well, I believe the administration is purposely putting misinformation out. We see this happen every time we have discrepancies about transparency bills. We saw it 10 years ago when we were discussing the abuses of stop, question, and frisk. The reason that we're able to agree that there was abuses is because we had data. We have no data on what's called level 1 or level 2 stops. The stop and frisks are called level 3. There are 4 altogether. 4 is an arrest, just to simplify. And what the federal monitor dealing with the abuse of stop and question and frisk have said is that there is an underreporting of level 3s, which means that officers oftentimes are saying that they're level 1 and 2 stops when they may not be.
Okay.
So what we said is, let's just all look at the same data so we can all have the same picture of what's going on. And so he said, let's just get some information around the level 1 and 2 stops.
Mayor Eric Adams says the How Many Stops Act would actually endanger public safety. The NYPD Chief Madry says that it would harm police and community relations. What's your response to that?
Well, the way they're describing it, they're correct, which is why we're not passing the bill that they're talking about. So the bill that we have only comes into play when you're asking investigatory questions or accusatory questions about a very specific thing. We're also not asking for any what's called pedigree information. So you don't need the name, you don't need the address. We're simply trying to get some demographics. It's about 4 or 5 questions that an officer can fill out on a drop-down on their phone.
Let me be very clear here then. Let me be very clear, because the mayor said, point blank, I will not sign this bill. I will not sign it the way it is, right? So you're saying right now, if I go up to a police officer, say, hey, can you please tell me directions, how do I get to so-and-so on the 1 train? They don't have to file a report based on
Absolutely
that interaction.
We actually wrote in the bill, and you can look at the bill, anyone can look at the bill online. The bill very specifically says, hope you can still hear me, I know it's frozen.
We hear you, I know, yep.
The bill very specifically says this is not for general communication or interaction with the community. It's very clear. We sent that to the mayor, and unfortunately, they're still giving misinformation. And it'd be easier if we can have this conversation about what it really is and not what it is not.
All right, at this point, let's move on to the ban on solitary confinement as a form of punishment. Do you have data on how often this practice is actually used? Does this ban prevent correction officers from using it to de-escalate situations?
We're going to hear you. I don't think we're going to see you, just so you know, but we want to hear your answer on this.
Apologies about that. But we had last year, I think, about 117 people put in what's called punitive segregation. What we do know is that however you call it, solitary, punitive segregation, all the data shows that when you have isolation for long hours, it not only harms you physically, psychologically, it actually increases the chances that you might get rearrested when you leave. And so what we said, we want to make sure you can only isolate people for the time period is needed to de-escalate whatever the immediate danger is, but you can separate them for much longer than that. And so this still allows for separation, and we're still allowing people to lose privileges and other things that people may think of to try to change behavior, but we want to increase the programming and other things that we know actually change behavior. What the corrections officers are pointing out, the dangers that are there, corrections officers being harmed, detainees being harmed and killed, those things are happening now, which says to us the use of solitary isn't working. We need to do something else.
All right, and last we're out of time here, and we're having trouble with the video here. I want to get your take on this. A lot of rumors, a lot of conjecture, I'm sure you've heard it, about whether or not there will be an indictment against Mayor Eric Adams. That's to be determined, right? But how ready are you to take over if that were to happen? And if it does, would you want to launch a mayoral campaign in 2024 and continue the job?
Well, I will say there was a hip-hop line that said if it was a split, we'd all be high. There's a lot of ifs there. But I will tell you, a part of being public advocate is you're next in line of succession. And so we've always known that. But I just want to be clear. It's not a job that I ran for. I'm running for re-election come 2025. So
not running for mayor?
Not running for mayor in 2025, no. I'm running for re-election. That's the job I applied for. I think we're doing a good job. There's is a very unique position to be able to push the city and its leaders in a good direction, and that's a job I want to continue doing.
All right, Public Advocate Jumaane Williams, thank you so much for joining us this morning.